Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have finally come to this event after a week-long Asia Pacific program for senior military officers. And I would like to congratulate the planners at RSIS for capping this program with a distinguished lunch talk by Major General Gary Hara. As you can see, General Hara is going to speak to us about U.S. land forces in Pacific rebalance, roles and relationship. As the American phrase goes, this is where the rubber hits the road, right? This is how the U.S. Army is translating the strategic guidance that's given to them to focus on the Asia Pacific into practice on the ground for the U.S. land forces in this region. And we have an eminently qualified speaker in Major General Gary Hara. General Hara received his commission from the Hawaiian Army National Guard Officers Cadet School. He said he started off as an infantry and then went to the armor. I think he saw the light and decided that flying was a much better deal. All right, I'm biased because I'm from the Air Force. He's currently the Deputy Commander-in-General Air National Guard for the U.S. Army Pacific. His detailed bio is in page 87 of your booklet, but what is not said in his bio is that General Hara is also the highest ranking member in an extended Hara family with many years of service in the US military. And according to my sources and from what I've read, together with his father and 3 other brothers, they have served a total of 192 years and still counting. So it is indeed my honor to invite a man of such military pedigree, Major General Hara, to address us at this capstone event. General Hara.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. Well, thank you everybody for having me here. You know, a lot of you were concerned and talked to me about the hurricane that was coming to Hawaii. Initially, my concern was that I'd be recalled early because one of my primary responsibilities is, you know, defense support to civil authorities in the event of this type of contingency. But now that the worst has passed and it's not a lot of damage, my concern is, will I be able to go home on Sunday because there's another hurricane, you know, Hurricane Julio going to Honolulu. But evidently it's veering north, and I think my operations officer and I should be able to make it home tomorrow. First, I'd like to say happy 49th National Day to all the Singaporeans here. You know, since the independence, Singapore has been a place that brings people from all religions, races, countries together, as evidenced by this great conference. You know, this is my first experience here, and I'd just like to bring from Hawaii to all of you a warm aloha. You know, I always enjoy visiting Singapore, as Singapore is such a gracious host, and I've always been treated very well here. And with this celebration, it makes this visit extra special for me. Now I'd like to thank the Rajaratnam School of International Studies, Nanyang Technological University, for hosting this great forum and for the opportunity to speak here today. Ambassador Desker, sir, you just mentioned that this will be your last forum, APPSMO forum, so if I could, I'd like to congratulate you on a job very, very well done. Other distinguished guests, faculty, and students, it means a lot for me personally to be here to help facilitate interactions, discussions, and understanding among senior military leaders in the Asia-Pacific region, and help to build and maintain the security and prosperity of all nations in the region. This is an important event, as we have all shared interest in building a lasting peace in the region. The Asia-Pacific Program for Senior Military Officers, now in its 16th year, is a visible demonstration of collaboration amongst nations to seek solutions to the security concerns of this very diverse and geographically challenging region. I've really enjoyed the discussions and personal connections that I have experienced, and I apologize for missing the opening address by Ambassador Desker. But this afternoon, I want to share a few thoughts and observations with you, a few points about how the U.S. Army is engaged in the Pacific and how land forces operate in the region. I very much appreciate the invitation to do so and honored to speak on behalf of General Brooks, the Commanding General for the U.S. Army Pacific. The first thing I'll tell you is that the U.S. Army Pacific, we call it USAPAC for short, is wearing several hats now. We have multiple responsibilities. First, headquarters USAPAC is a theater army that does the work on behalf of the United States Army. Second, we are the Army Service Component Command to US PACOM. And thirdly, General Brooks has recently been designated as the Theater Joint Force Land Component Commander, a role that brings together key parts of Admiral Locklear's land power, US Army Pacific, Marine Forces Pacific, and Special Operations Command Pacific as well. So on the US side, we have operationalized to maximize our effort and output. And speaking of maximizing efforts and output, this venue, APPSMO, and the Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies does just that by bringing together defense military officers from the Asia Pacific and beyond to discuss matters of common interest and to build a community of interest around the role of defense and security within this internationally important geographic region. APPSMO provides a venue to hear from key regional defense leaders. This insight then informs our assessment as we address new challenges and opportunities in this region. In April, we celebrated the Association of the United States Army Second Annual Institute of Land Warfare, or LANDPAC Symposium and Exhibition. This was held in Honolulu, where we had a wide array of presenters and panelists, involvement from industry and academia, representation from several regional countries to include Singapore, as well as representation from our US PACOM land forces and joint partners. This exciting and well-attended event served as an acknowledgement that land forces remain essential to security and stability in the Asia-Pacific region. Now let me talk a little bit very briefly about some of our history. I won't go into detail on the history of the United States Army because that is a long and storied one. Certainly, the history of land forces throughout the Pacific is well documented. However, there are a few things I believe are worthy of note at this forum. First, our experience in the Asia-Pacific region has had a joint and expeditionary composition since the late 1890s. The Army played a significant role in the region's security and stability then and has maintained a presence since, earning more campaign streamers in this part of the world than any other area outside the Americas. So this region is not new to the US Army or to the role of land forces. Yet it remains a diverse and challenging region, just as it has always been. In this present time, as the United States reduces the numbers of land forces that are deployed in the Middle East, Central Asia, and Europe, the weight of our attention and our presence returns to the Indo-Asia-Pacific region as part of a strategic rebalancing of national priorities. So again, this is not a pivot. Through continued partnerships, the U.S. will invest in diplomatic, economic, and military and assistant resources in a way that is commensurate with our comprehensive whole-of-government approach. This focus places a premium on the use of strategic land power because the region's primary drivers of human endeavor, interaction, and decisions, things that happen in the human domain, all find their beginnings and endings within the land domain. Security remains the enabling companion of economy. Economies affect people where they live. Therefore, securing the world's largest populations from external and internal threats calls for increasingly professional and agile land forces. Moreover, the natural disasters that threaten and claim lives every year, especially in this region, where more than 80% of the world's fatalities from natural disasters occur, and if not effectively responded to, may undermine national security as well as the global economy. As a way of enhancing Asia-Pacific relationships, USPACOM conducts HADR exercises in order to practice the difficult integration of capabilities of a joint and international and national aid organizations. This long-term planning and preparedness, the building of relationships with allies and partners, then continued training by soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines with their counterparts, allow the U.S. to respond quickly and effectively following these types of disasters. So it is on the land where land forces, the Army, Marines, and special operators become key multipliers, a decisive element of American national security, protecting U.S. interests, and demonstrating our nation's continued commitment to the region in ways that other means cannot achieve. It is also through the relationships forged in collaboration with our partner nation land forces that we enrich the promise of security and prosperity throughout the region. U.S. Defense Secretary Hagel's recent visit and talks with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Defense Ministers Meeting Plus, his travels to Indonesia, other engagements by Obama administration officials, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement, and President Obama's recent travel to the region are all representation of U.S. defense diplomacy. Secretary Hagel notes, and I quote, "These diplomatic and economic initiatives are designed to bring greater prosperity to all our nations by building trade and investment, increasing our cultural and societal ties, educating our people, and fostering innovation to provide better health care, more renewable energy, and a sustainable environment," unquote. Before I continue, let me describe a few of the environmental factors that impact this dynamic and challenging region, and further emphasize the role of land forces in mitigating and responding to crises. The Asia-Pacific region is extremely diverse and complex, rife with potential man-made or natural crises at any time. In addition, it encompasses over half the Earth's surface and more than half of the world's population, concentrated in only 17% of the world's landmass. It is home to the 3 largest economies in the world, the 4 most populous nations, the world's largest democracy. It has 9 of the 10 largest ports and the busiest sea lanes in the world. These factors help to account for $8 trillion in two-way trade within the region and another $1.2 trillion with the U.S. And this is about over a quarter of the global gross domestic product. But that's not all. The Asia-Pacific is also the most militarized area in the world, with 6 of the world's 10 largest armies, and of the 27 nations with armed forces, 20 have chiefs of defense from Army backgrounds. The long and proud heritage of the U.S. Army and of U.S. land forces in the Asia-Pacific region, coupled with the steps taken over several decades to develop resilient relationships with our regional partners, steps to enhance the capacity of partner nations in areas that is important to them, and steps to build enduring power projection capabilities are all major natural resources dedicated to our rebalance strategy. Since the rebalance announcement, Land Forces has been busy trying to deepen regional understanding and building partner capacity through leader engagements, training exchanges, and real-world humanitarian assistance disaster relief operations. Earlier this year, Admiral Locklear testified before the House Armed Services Committee on U.S. PACOM's posture, and he highlighted a few of the many great things land forces are doing throughout the theater to support peace and prosperity. For starters, while still supporting our friends and allies in the region, our relationship with China has increased across all levels of government. Land force engagements with the People's Liberation Army are an important part of the military-to-military relationship, and this dialogue can provide a channel of communication that remains open when tensions emerge in other domains. Our pursuit of this channel of communication does not in any way displace our existing treaties, alliances, and relationships. Rather, it adds to an existing framework, a framework for dialogue among the region's militaries and nations. Here are a few examples of building these channels of communications with China. Last year, shortly after USUPAC's elevation to a 4-star command, General Brooks had the privilege of hosting the People's Republic of China Minister of Defense and his military delegation in Hawaii. This was part of the broader PACOM hosting. USUPAC participated with China in a quadrilateral disaster management exchange in New Zealand. And USUPAC hosted a bilateral disaster management field exchange with 60 PLA soldiers and 9 PLA generals in Hawaii. These efforts and others aim to increase transparency and to diffuse tensions within the region as China continues to emerge economically and militarily. Another example of our actions speaking more loudly than our words, Pacific Land Forces led the joint team response to Typhoon Haiyan that devastated the Philippines. Building on a solid foundation of previous exercises and exchanges with realistic scenarios, and the invaluable contribution of forward presence west of the international dateline, PACOM designated Lieutenant General John Whistler, 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force, as the commander of Joint Task Force 505, with Major General Gary Beard, USUPAC Deputy Commanding General, as his deputy commander. Supported by U.S. Special Operations elements who were already present assisting the Armed Forces of the Philippines, and by deploying key logistics, medical, intelligence, and communications experts, the Joint Task Force was able to make a significant contribution in helping the government of the Philippines and the U.S. Embassy country team provide relief in the most critical early days of the disaster response. This very successful operation stands as a testament to the importance of collectively building capacity to respond to crises that are common to most Asian and Pacific countries, including the United States, and it comments to the value of land forces in the region. In July, we just concluded exercise Tiger Bomb and Lightning Strike in Hawaii. This is a brigade-level command post exercise and a company-level field training exercise for which the first time in my memory included a combined live-fire exercise with the soldiers of the 25th Infantry Division and the Singapore 9th Division. The intent was building interoperability and fostering closer relationships, cultural awareness, and mutual understanding among service members from both armies. This exercise between the U.S. Army and Singapore Armed Forces has been conducted since 1981 and is the oldest standing bilateral exercise in Singapore Armed Forces history. It speaks volumes to the close ties between both armies. We share these experiences across the region in bilateral and multilateral exercises designed to enhance cooperation and our combined abilities to work together, learn from each other, side by side, in a variety of conditions. Let me talk a little bit of land power in support of PACOM. The modern joint operating environment demands unity of effort across the various domains. including the land domain, and in the human terrain where USAPAC, as the Pacific Sole Army Service Command, Theater Army Headquarters, and the lead for the Theater Joint Force Land Component Command, work so closely with U.S. Marine Corps Forces and Special Operations Command to ensure for Admiral Locklear and his air and maritime components that land domain combat assets are properly postured across the theater. This requires continuous assessments, especially in light of current operational needs and future contingencies. Achieving the best possible theater set is a joint activity, and PACOM relies on the land component to lead the effort in gaining a better theater set. The Theater Joint Force Land Component Command is one of the mechanisms U.S. PACOM has developed to effectively and efficiently plan for crisis and to maintain our steady state of land force engagements over this expansive geographic area, and also to create a more agile, effective mission command architecture that can easily transition from daily routine business to crisis response. In our area of responsibility, we recognize that early warning times are eroding, and essential to our strategic redesign are four tenets: trained and ready forces, cooperative and persistent engagement, agile mission command, and forward presence. These four tenets are very important to us, and to address these tenets, all services have found ways to employ their forces to better fit the needs and dynamic nature of this region. The Marines' rotational force deployments to Darwin, the Army's rotational force deployments to Korea, the Army's ballistic missile defense deployment to Guam, the Navy LCS in Singapore, and F-22s in Japan. These are examples of new force employment that send a clearly visible message of our commitment across the region. And by 2020, the U.S. Navy will reposture from a 50-50 split between the Atlantic and Pacific to a 60-40 split. Land forces also support the joint force with critical capabilities and unique functions in the form of Army support to other services, and executive agent tasks such as chemical decontamination, security of theater lines of communication, psychological operations, defense of forward operating bases, and air defense, which are vital to the success of all campaigns, not only in the land domain, but the air, maritime, cyber, and space domains. USAPAC is currently exploring a new employment model that works with allies and partners using existing exercises and engagements as our foundation. In addition to force employment, also critical to the joint force continued success in the AOR is this effort of setting the necessary capabilities and infrastructure in the theater. In consideration of the tyranny of distance, which we all appreciate, that has always been a challenge for Pacific forces in their ability to respond, the distances are significant. It takes a long time, no matter what mode of travel you choose, and it stretches and strains lines of communication, adding to response and transit times. In that regard, U.S. Army Pacific is actively engaged in updating and right-sizing Army preposition stocks in our area of responsibility to support joint and interagency operations that we know will come. Bilateral relationships we build with our allies and partners throughout the region are absolutely critical to mutual defense, but also form a basis for multilateral security arrangements. Going from bilateral to multilateral security arrangements can actually strengthen efforts across the Asia-Pacific security challenges. Bilateral relationships then are the cornerstone of multilateral cooperation that can become essential to success in responding to the hazards and threats of this region. land forces structures for multilateral dialogue like this forum, or the U.S. Army Pacific programs for bringing countries together at senior levels on a recurring basis, known as the Pacific Army's Chief Conference and the Pacific Army's Management Seminar, enable dialogue among countries that might not be able to have dialogue in a capital-to-capital type discussion or framework. Multilateral cooperation is essential to meeting transnational security challenges. So I'm extremely excited to have been part of this formal and informal discussions we have had here, and I thoroughly enjoyed the presentations that were made over the past few days. I also appreciate the opportunity we have had to interact with one another, to have a direct dialogue, a direct communication of interest. It has been a great opportunity to share ideas, and I can personally say I learned a lot, and I know I have much more to learn from the perspectives that each of you bring. I'm encouraged that we have laid the groundwork here to define a new future of mutual understanding, peace, and prosperity for all nations in the Asia Pacific. Once again, congratulations to all the Singaporean people for the 49th National Day. I'm looking forward to the parade and festivities later on today. In Hawaiian, mahalo nui loa, thank you very much. And as we say in the U.S. Army Pacific, one team.